Have you ever imagined how our streets would be like if people consider cycling as the mode of transportation? I know, it almost sounds like a dream to have streets like what was in Singapore, Amsterdam, Netherlands, London, and other bike capitals in the world. But with the ever worsening effects of climate change, could we just keep dreaming and do nothing? Among the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals are goal number 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, and goal number 13, Climate Action. Could you see that cycling can contribute to the achievement of both goals? I can see that. However, in our country, Philippines, transportation sector remains one of the major contributors to our greenhouse gas emissions, which cause climate change. And in this country, we still lack bike-friendly policies and facilities that would encourage people to go cycling. So, in the absence of these policies and facilities, what can we do to promote cycling? This study attempts to answer that question by looking at the influence of IEC materials on college students' behavioral intention toward cycling. So the problems I'm trying to address in this study are: how can IEC interventions influence college students' behavioral intention towards cycling? And there's this second question: what are the perceived barriers that may still hinder an individual from executing a positive behavioral intention towards cycling? In this second question, I want to know if, while an individual may already have a positive intention to cycle, can there still be perceived barriers that may hinder the person from actually doing that positive intention? And if there are, what are those barriers? In answering this question, we can somehow have a glimpse of the extent to which IEC interventions can influence one's intention. To help me achieve my objectives, I'd like to explore in this study through the lenses of Dr. Isaac Eisen's theory of planned behavior, with application of some concepts and principles of the cybernetic and socio-psychological traditions. In the theory of planned behavior, Dr. Eisen said that the immediate antecedent of the behavior is one's intention to do the actual behavior. And the person's behavioral intention is mainly influenced by these three elements. First, the attitudes towards the behavior. That's a person's overall evaluation of the behavior. Second is the subjective norms about the behavior, which spring from the social pressure an individual feels about what other people think about him or her doing the actual behavior. And third is the perceived behavioral control towards the behavior. It is the extent to which a person feels able to enact the behavior. I'd like to mix that up with some principles from the cybernetic model of Bertalanffy's, which explores the negative or positive relationships between interacting elements within an operation, or in this case within one's cognitive system, and may detect inputs and output. It further suggests that one can manipulate or operate on the system by changing its inputs. On socio-psychological approach to communication, we also answer questions like: How is information assimilated, organized, and used in forming message strategies and plans? How do people attribute the causes of behavior? How are messages assimilated into the belief or attitude system? And how is information integrated to form beliefs, attitudes, and behavior? Dr. Eisen agreed to the principle in one of his presentations at Boston University Communication Research Forum last year when he said that for one to act in a reasonable way, one needs to be sufficiently knowledgeable in the matter at hand. Therefore, information is necessary. So with that, this is my conceptual framework. My research design would be experimental, with randomized two-group design post-test only. Participants are college students from the University of Caloocan City North Campus, from one course program only. Simple random sampling would be adopted because in one course program there are usually 16 sections, that is 4 sections per year level. I would assign numbers 1 to 16 to the sections, and the odd numbers would be my treatment group. The even numbers would be the no treatment group. I would use IEC interventions, 3 IECs with positively framed messages to improve attitudes, subjective norms, and perceived behavioral control towards cycling. I will limit this to print IEC materials. For the IEC material targeted on attitudes, that would be a 3-fold brochure containing messages on reasons for cycling, basically environmental, health, and economic benefits of cycling. For the subjective norm, that would be a feature article published on the Philippine Daily Inquirer, How Biking Around Manila Has Made My Life Better, and at the back, photos of some Filipino celebrities who cycle. And for the perceived behavioral control, I would design a leaflet containing cycling tips, road safety skills, selling price of bicycles for beginners, and a list of bicycle organizations that offer bike lessons. So the instrument for data gathering would be post-intervention survey questionnaire that would determine the attributes of the participants, measure and evaluate attitudes, perceived behavioral control, subjective norms, and also the behavioral intention towards cycling. Mostly would use Likert 7-point bipolar adjective scale. The survey questionnaire would also seek to see the causal attribution to the IEC interventions. So there will be questions on material and message recall. It will also seek to determine perceived strength or weakness of influence of the interventions, and ask the students to rank a set of predetermined barriers to know their perceived barriers from actually executing the positive intention towards cycling. The students' answers to the question about their perceived barriers would be a very important, essential part of the recommendation section of my study, because it will determine how far can IEC interventions go when it comes to encouraging students to adopt cycling as their mode of transportation. Because when students answer that some of their perceived barriers will be lack of policies or lack of bike-friendly facilities, then we can say that communication interventions can only do so much, that the perceived barriers can only be addressed by certain authorities or agencies or officials who have the actual power or authority to address the matter. So the student's answer to that question would be an integral part of the recommendations section of my study. The analysis will be highly descriptive. It will primarily record all observations from the treatment and the no treatment group and compare the observations or the results of the survey questionnaire. And as to the quantitative measurements for the elements of the theory of planned behavior, I'm using a theory of planned behavior questionnaire measurement guide from the Centre for Health Services Research, University of Newcastle, UK. So basically that's it. That's my research proposal. Thank you for listening, and I would appreciate any feedback or comments or questions on my presentation. So feel free to leave a comment below.